Brazil has now surpassed 6 million confirmed COVID-19 cases as its hospitals are overwhelmed with the influx of patients. The developers of Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine announced it has proven to be 95% effective, according to second interim analysis of clinical trial data. Lawmakers of Libya's split parliament are meeting in the Moroccan city of Tangiers with the aim of unifying the House of Representatives and resolving the political crisis. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Brazil has now surpassed 6 million confirmed COVID-19 cases as its hospitals are overwhelmed with the influx of patients. The South American country, which ranks third in the world in terms of the number of cases reported, is seeing a worrying growth in infections, and many experts believe it could be entering a second wave of the epidemic. Brazil ranks second in the world in terms of its COVID-19 death toll, which now stands at over 169,000, only surpassed by the United States. Far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has faced widespread criticism of his mishandling of the crisis and his downplaying of the virus as just a little flu. Protests continue in Guatemala as diverse sectors mobilize to demand the resignation of President Alejandro Giammattei. Workers, student movement and civil society organizations held protests in various parts of the country to demand the president's resignation following Congress's approval of the budget for 2021, which foresees cuts to spending on health, education and human rights and an increase in public debt, which demonstrates the stress is unsustainable. Meanwhile, indigenous community representatives gathered in a central plaza of the capital to support the demands voiced by social movements and organizations. On Monday, the Congress announced it was suspending the final ratification process for the budget in the face of the widespread protests. And moving to Peru, where social and political movements and workers' unions continue to mobilize to demand a new constitution, as well as improvements to labor rights. Construction unions, as well as the student movement, are mobilizing to call for the launch of a constituent process that guarantees democratic rights in the face of the ongoing political crisis that the country is experiencing. At the same time, students demanded that 6% of GDP be allocated to the education sector. In addition, health workers are demanding the government pay outstanding salaries and provide sufficient medical supplies to face the health emergency sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic. In Paraguay, the rural workers' movement is mobilizing in the capital to demand that the government of President Mario Abdo Benitez fulfill the agreements reached on economic redistribution. The national coordinator that groups rural workers' organizations explained that the mobilization seeks to exert pressure so that the executive fulfills the established agreements regarding the cancellation of debt, the reactivation of family agriculture projects, land titles for landless rural workers, and subsidies for producers affected by the drought. In this sense, President Mario Abdo Benitez claimed his administration has already fulfilled its obligations by transferring some $25 million from the Ministry of Public Works to the Ministry of Agriculture for projects aimed at benefiting rural workers.
Here, we do not see the will of the government to support an important sector: farmers, rural workers, indigenous people, who have historically been abandoned, excluded from society. This is why we return and ratify our position. We say that this commitment to the people must be fulfilled, because it is a disgrace that today they sign an agreement and tomorrow they ignore it.
Chilean health workers have entered the second day of their indefinite national strike action. As part of the strike, health workers rallied in the capital, Santiago's Dignity Square. Strikers are demanding a larger public health budget, as well as better wages and working conditions. At the same time, other sectors have also mobilized to demand the resignation of President Sebastián Piñera and pledged to remain mobilized until they receive a favorable response to their demands from the government.
Our complaint, our demand, a decent budget for public health. Not the miserable budget that the government of Sebastián Piñera is promoting. This is our third week of mobilization. We are in a prolonged national strike, and we will continue this prolonged national strike action until we achieve our goal have a decent budget for 80% of the people who are being treated in public hospitals that are receiving a miserable budget.
US President-elect Joe Biden unveiled his nominations for his national security and foreign policy teams, several of whom are poised to make history if their nominations are approved by the US Senate. Among the nominations are old colleagues from his years in the Obama administration. The President-elect announced Anthony Blinken as Secretary of State and John Kerry as Climate Envoy, while Janet Yellen could become the first woman to lead the US Treasury Department. Meanwhile, Cuban-born Alejandro Mayorkas was nominated for Secretary of Homeland Security to become the first Latino in the post, and Avril Haines is set to become the first woman Director of National Intelligence. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, with extensive foreign policy experience, is Biden's pick for US Ambassador to the United Nations, while Jack Sullivan was chosen for National Security Advisor. On Tuesday, Pennsylvania officially certified Democrat Joe Biden's election victory over Donald Trump to take the state's 20 electoral college votes. Governor Tom Wolf tweeted that the Pennsylvania Department of State had certified the results of the November 3rd vote after Michigan did the same on Monday in the latest setback to Trump's attempts to overturn his defeat. It also came a day after the Trump administration authorized the release of federal funds to the former Democratic vice president to begin his transition into the White House. Despite that authorization, Trump still refuses to concede. Biden won the state by over 81,000 votes out of some 6.9 million cast. The developers of Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine announced it has proven to be 95% effective, according to second interim analysis of clinical trial data. The two-dose vaccine will be available on international markets for less than $10 per dose and will be free for all Russian citizens.
Sputnik V is the most accessible of the vaccines that are more than 90% effective in phase 3 clinical trials. We have already obtained industrial production of this vaccine in dry form, which will allow it to be used and distributed in temperatures between above 2 and 8 degrees Celsius. In this way, Sputnik V will be one of the most accessible vaccines from the point of view of its distribution, transport and logistics.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his Japanese counterpart in Tokyo this Tuesday. The two foreign ministers were expected to discuss issues such as the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, among other challenges that the region is facing.
I'm really glad to visit Japan upon the invitation from my old friend Minister Toshimitsu Motegi. The coronavirus has spread all over the world and the global situation is also changing quickly. The world is now facing dramatic change. China and Japan are long-term regional partners. As you mentioned, we need to maintain timely and strategic dialogue. We are meeting here today, the first face-to-face meeting since the pandemic emerged, thanks to the efforts made by both sides.
Beijing accused London of having a colonial mindset and double standards this Tuesday after the UK government said it was considering reviewing a deal allowing its judges to sit at Hong Kong's highest court.
Hong Kong has already returned to the motherland for 23 years, but the UK government is still misrepresenting the facts, making irresponsible remarks on Hong Kong affairs, and groundlessly criticizing China through the publication of the so-called biannual report on Hong Kong issues. We firmly oppose and strongly condemn this. The Chinese government's determination to implement one country, two systems uphold national sovereignty, security and development interests, and oppose external forces' interference in Hong Kong affairs. We urge the UK to abandon its colonial mindset, retract its hypocrisy and double standards, stop interfering in other countries' internal affairs, and soon return to the right track of international law and the basic principles of international relations.
And the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also said China appreciated the positive comments on relations with Australia made by Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
China noticed PM Morrison's positive comments on the global impact of China's economic development and China's poverty alleviation drive. China will never waver from the path of peaceful development and throughout has supported developing friendly cooperative relations with other countries on a foundation of mutual respect, mutual benefit and equality. We also hope that countries can abandon ideological prejudices and follow the principles of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international relations and determine their own stance based on the rights and wrongs of the situation.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced Tuesday that the EU will sign a sixth contract for an upcoming coronavirus vaccine.
Vaccination can help and is crucial to end this pandemic, that we overcome this virus. And here I have today good news. I'm happy to announce that tomorrow we will approve a new contract to secure another COVID-19 vaccine in our vaccine portfolio. This contract allows us to buy up to 160 million doses of a vaccine produced by Moderna. According to the results of clinical trials, this vaccine could be highly effective against COVID-19.
The defence team of Shamima Begum, a British-born woman who left the United Kingdom aged 15 to join the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant in Syria, made its case at the Supreme Court this Tuesday that requirements for procedural fairness cannot be overridden by national security and that their client did not have a fair and effective opportunity to present her appeal. The case has sparked controversy over how to deal with people linked to the Islamic State, especially after being recruited at a young age.
The impediments to Ms Begum having a fair and effective opportunity to present her appeal are not peripheral to the appeal. They are absolutely central to her ability to have a meaningful opportunity to appeal, particularly where the presence of her explanations, her mitigations for alleged past actions and her evidence on her present attitudes are likely to be, at the very least, significant elements.
French authorities on Tuesday ordered an investigation into the forceful removal by police of a camp of asylum seekers in central Paris that prompted outrage over the brutal tactics used. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said he had agreed to a proposal by the Paris police chief to immediately refer the issue to the National Police Inspectorate General, which investigates officers' conduct. The government is already facing a storm of criticism over new security legislation being debated in Parliament that opponents say will erode the accountability of the police. Officers used tear gas to break up the Paris camp, which was set up to protest against earlier forced evacuations of hundreds of asylum seekers from other camps. Volunteers had helped erect around 500 blue tents at Republic Square that were quickly filled, with the majority of people coming from Afghanistan. And small groups of protesters clashed with police near Republic Square in Paris on Tuesday night after a rally in support of asylum seekers and to denounce the forcible evacuation of the camp set up to house them by riot police on Monday. The violent move has sparked widespread outrage among those supporting the right of people to seek refuge in France. A consultative meeting of Libyan lawmakers aimed at unifying the divided Libyan parliament, currently split in two rival parts based in Tripoli and Tobruk, started in Tangiers, Morocco on Tuesday, with the participation of more than 100 members representing different political factions. The meeting, which will run until November 25th, is the first of its kind and is aimed at setting the agenda for another official session of the Libyan House of Representatives to be held in Libya, with the hope of resolving the political crisis and restoring sovereignty and stability to the country.
In Morocco, we are working on publishing or agreeing on an agenda to return to Libya and hold an official session in which the presidency of the House of Representatives, will be changed, in which also the internal regulations will be published, and the House of Representatives will be organized and unified and bring Libya out of the political crisis.
We are in Tangiers in the Kingdom of Morocco to unite the House of Representatives, which has in fact been launched since yesterday. And we are in consultative meetings in order to gather points of view and also to erase some mistakes among some colleagues.
All our meetings are consultative and unofficial to agree to find a way to meet in one of the Libyan cities, and probably it will be Garames or Sirte, and there we will start our official meetings inside Libya.
Niger's former president Mamadou Tanja has died at the age of 82, the government announced on Tuesday. In a statement read out on public television, current president Mahamadou Issoufou's office said the former president's death would be marked by 3 days of mourning throughout the national territory. From 1999, Tangiers headed a civilian government that replaced a short-lived military junta. But he was ousted from power by the army in February 2010 after a change to the constitution his critics claimed was a bid to cling on to power, paving the way for Issoufou to take the presidency in a 2011 election. On Tuesday, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani urged the international community to continue supporting Afghanistan, even as he acknowledged that donors are likely to cut aid under the strain of COVID-19.
Despite our suffering, I want to be very clear that our commitments to negotiations with the Taliban remains firm. Our negotiating team remains steadfast in their commitment to talks in Doha. We must bring an end to the violence that is haunting our lives and robbing our children of the joys of childhood. We ask you, our international partners, to help us do more with less. Over the past several years, our population has changed. The capabilities and capacities of our people have developed. Our challenges have changed. Our access to resources have changed. So too, the approach to our partnership must evolve. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown us all into a state of global uncertainty. We are forced to backbench development priorities and reallocate already limited resources to fighting the pandemic here. And we are still in the throes of it. A second wave and potentially a third could set us back again and again.
And United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday said he fears a winter spike in coronavirus cases could put a further strain on the poor and war-torn nation of Afghanistan. Guterres spoke during a largely virtual pledging conference, the latest effort to drum up aid and support for a country where Taliban fighters are making inroads against the government. The gathering in Geneva, co-hosted by Finland, was expected to draw diplomats, civil society advocates and international organisations from over 70 countries in the first such event in 4 years. The pledging conference, overshadowed in part by the COVID-19 pandemic, seeks to lay out objectives for the next 4 years for Afghanistan and is expected to generate billions in aid for the poor and conflict-ridden nation.
I urge the redoubling of efforts towards an immediate and conditional ceasefire in order to save lives and prevent the further spread of COVID-19. This will create a conducive environment for the Afghanistan peace negotiations in Doha, a major opportunity to realize the long-held aspirations of the Afghan people. An inclusive process in which women, young people and victims of conflict are meaningfully represented offers the best hope of sustainable peace. If we can link that with economic opportunity, then the prospects will be even higher. Today is an opportunity to work together towards that goal.
Ethiopia's government is again warning residents of the besieged capital of the northern Tigray region to prepare for anything that could happen as the clock ticks on a 72-hour ultimatum before a military assault. Human rights groups and others were alarmed over the weekend when Ethiopia's military warned civilians in the Tigray capital, Mekelle, that there would be no mercy if they don't save themselves before the offensive to flush out the defiant regional leaders. Ethiopia's Nobel Peace Prize laureate Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed issued a 72-hour ultimatum for the leaders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front to surrender. Tens of thousands of the Ethiopians have been forced to flee the region into neighbouring Sudan as the conflict shows no signs of ending soon.
The Mekelle people would have a number of choices to collaborate with national defense forces to avoid any strike, because the slightest strike is a loss for us. Even if we hit one school, even if we hit one residence, even if we hit one road, it's a loss. So by collaborating, we can save the city and also one life, because now that they are hiding out in a densely populated city, the slightest strike would end up losing lives or properties or sacred places.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss and thank you for watching.